Welcome to All Access, where we meet at the intersection of healthcare and generic and biosimilar medications. Brought to you by the Association for Accessible Medicines, representing the generics and biosimilars industry. Hello, I'm Dan Leonard, and welcome to All Access. This is the first of our podcasts where we have special guests who are also individuals that I'm very proud to call colleagues. We typically feature outside experts to bring in their perspective on issues of import to the generics and biosimilars industry. But we also have so many inside experts. We thought this podcast would be a great platform to learn more about some of the folks that we work with here at AAM and to gain insights from them. So our very first team members that we're going to feature and speak with are here with me today. And we're doing this in conjunction with October, which everyone knows is National Pharmacist Month. And at AAM, we're very proud to have 3 pharmacists on staff. And I'm joined by 2 of them here today, Lisa Parks and Monét Stanford. So welcome, ladies. Good to see you.
Hello, Dan.
Thank you.
So first on, Lisa came to us, came to the Association for Accessible Medicines 7.5 years ago from the FDA. And Lisa worked at the FDA where she was in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, CDER, and the Office of Generic Drugs. And she serves as our Vice President of Science and Regulatory Affairs. She's our primary point of contact for relations with key offices of the FDA and at USP. And among the list of responsibilities and accomplishments, Lisa has many, but recently served as our industry lead negotiator with the agency on the reauthorization of GDUFA, the Generic Drug User Fee Amendments Program, and co-lead for the Biosimilar User Fee Act, BASUFA. Monét is relatively new to us and came and joined us last May as our Director of Policy. We're very glad that she has joined us. Monét identifies, researches, writes on policy issues of importance to the generic and biosimilars industries. Before joining us, she managed government relations and regulatory affairs for Kaiser Permanente and served as policy development specialist at Centene. Welcome to you both. First, Lisa, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit more about your background. Why did you decide to go into pharmacy in the first place?
Sure. And thank you so much for that great introduction, Dan. And I believe the only aspect of my background that was missing would be my time as a practicing pharmacist. So prior to joining the FDA, I worked on various sectors of pharmacy, such as ambulatory, hospital, retail, long-term care, and really running the operational and logistical aspects of the various organizations over, I would say, 2 decades. So kind of in a nutshell, my prior life prior to FDA and AAM.
Wearing the white lab jacket behind the counter.
Absolutely. In my retail days, with the lab coat and, having that daily face-to-face interaction with patients, I believe if I reflect, that would probably be the most rewarding because you really got the sense of the meaning and the value that you bring to patients on a day-to-day basis. So I think, when I reflect on that, those are the kind of the happy days that I see. I really do miss that one-on-one type of engagement.
So Monét, how about yourself? Why did you decide to go into pharmacy initially, and what's motivated you about the pharmacy world in general?
Yep. And thanks again for having Lisa and I on the podcast. But for me, I got into pharmacy because I believe it was the public health arm of the clinical professions. I'm sure Lisa can attest to this. Practicing pharmacists could see up to hundreds of patients per day and still have that individual level of engagement. So really sharing a lot of clinical knowledge patients on a daily basis. But I transitioned into pharmacy policy after being a practicing pharmacist once I realized or developed an understanding of how integral drugs are to the overall healthcare system. Most, if not all, conditions matriculate into some type of pharmaceutical therapy to maintain or promote their health. as many standard and novel approaches to treatment continue to enter the market, it doesn't mean anything if patients don't have access to them at the right time. So in my view, as a pharmacist, the most efficacious method to ensure that the most patients receive the most amount of therapies in the most appropriate way is through a conducive legislative and regulatory environment, i.e. pharmacy policy.
It's fascinating how you make that connection from the patient to the very important policy work that you're doing. And Lisa, pharmacists in their role, and when you were a pharmacist, you were wearing clearly several different hats dealing with patients in the healthcare, sometimes overwhelming healthcare system for patients. Can you tell our listeners about some of those hats you wore and how pharmacy has changed since your time behind the counter?
Sure. So, I absolutely agree that pharmacists have historically worn many different types of hats for various reasons. But I think the one that comes to mind, and I feel that would be of most critical nature, would be that of the information provider. So the role of the pharmacist places them really in the front lines of patient interaction. As such, they provide, patient information with respect to medication regimens. They assess medication compliance, patients' experience with side effects or adverse effects, and just, pharmacist to patient interaction. And having that type of responsibility and playing that type of essential role with respect to medication adherence, I think is really important because it really kind of, shines a light onto why treatment regimens fail and why there's such a crisis in terms of the overall healthcare system. If you don't provide the patient the information needed to have them really understand the importance of compliance and importance of taking their medications in the prescribed manner, that really kind of goes against a really good outcome for treatment for patients. And I feel that that is one of the critical roles that pharmacists play, is to be that provider of that information.
And Monét, what do you say? What do you think would be some of the biggest challenges faced by pharmacists when you were practicing, but also now, as Lisa just walked through how the profession has evolved? What are some of the challenges you think they face now, and how can industry support the pharmacist?
It would probably be taking all of the different value-added aspects that Lisa just provided an overview of and ensuring that that value is recognized external to the pharmacy community. I can recall when I was a practicing pharmacist, pharmacists love talking about how amazing pharmacy is to other pharmacists, but sharing that information externally would provide extreme value. And I would even argue that those conversations could lead to a more conducive reimbursement environment that would proliferate some of the different services that Lisa just mentioned that we could provide in the community setting.
Do you think there are misunderstandings out there? Do you think the general public has misunderstandings about the role of the pharmacist, and understand where the pharmacist is in the chain?
I think I'm trying to think of the polite way to say, like many other individuals in the healthcare system, pharmacists may be taken for granted. Most practicing pharmacists have a doctorate level of education and do more than just provide your medications for you at the counter. They go through the pharmacokinetics, they go through all of the different intended therapeutic and side effects with you. They also have like an economic background where they're making sure you're getting the best price at the counter. All of those things are happening in real time, but to the patient, it's just another commercial function where you're just providing a service. So I think perhaps on our side, maybe a little bit more PR illustrating all of what we're doing to make sure our patients are safe would probably contribute to that conversation. But I agree that there is certainly still an uphill battle in demonstrating our value to the public.
So I want to spend a minute on thinking about our industry and the generics and how it fits in with the pharmacy profession, and particularly looking back to when you were both practicing. We just this week launched our access and savings report here at AAM. And one of the data points that we use all the time, I know I use it every day, is that generics are now 90% of the prescriptions dispensed in this country. That is not an accident. That is because our members are making high quality, affordable medicine. But before it gets to the patient, it has to go through the payer, it has to go through the pharmacist. So, I give a lot of credit to in the channel, in the system, to the pharmacist for getting us to that 90%. So I don't know, I'm not going to quiz you on what that percentage was of generic dispense rates when you're both practicing, but clearly it has been going up. And it's that connectivity between the payers, wanting affordable medications, the patients wanting access. Do you believe, or have you seen firsthand the role the pharmacist has played in getting our industry to that 90% threshold?
So certainly pharmacists have a huge role in making sure patients understand how important generics are to their therapy. And if I may, since we're talking about both the generics and biosimilars industry, I'm thinking about biosimilars and how it's going to be a similar conversation for the upcoming 2023 launches that we're all anticipating in the biosimilar space. And I'm sure Lisa can describe the situation with interchangeability and how that may impact the pharmacist's ability to choose on behalf of their patients. But the same level of education that we had to provide when generics first started to enter the market is the same level we'll have to provide as pharmacists when biosimilars into the market, except it'll be slightly more complicated, of course, because of the concept of a biosimilar. But it's exciting, and I see a lot of opportunities for pharmacists in that space. So I just want to make sure I mentioned that we're proactively looking at ways to expand those educational opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's also in our savings report that last year in 2020, biosimilars generated almost $8 billion in savings off of the brand price. But by 2025, it's going to be $133 billion. A lot of what you just walked through, Monet, and the kind of oral solid days now coming true in the biosimilars phase. Lisa, anything to add on that?
I think working with other stakeholders and, within my regulatory science area, it's going to be interfacing with the agency. How can we kind of bring them into the mix and fold them into the work that we've done on the advocacy front for biosimilars? So I think it's going to be interesting times. I was at the forefront of the generics when that started up. And I am really looking forward to seeing how biosimilars, education, adoption is going to play out in the coming years.
Well, speaking of that, I often struggle with explaining to my mother what I do for a living. And every time I talk to her, she asks me to explain. So I used to think I was decent at communicating, but clearly I can't get it across to my own mother. So this is the out question for both of you. How do you describe or explain to your family, what it is you do? I think they probably understood what it was to be a pharmacist and what you did in that role. But how do you explain now to your family and friends what you do for a living? Monet, you go first.
Okay, Mom. Well, what I do. As a pharmacist at the Association for Accessible Medicines, I guess I think of the team I work on as the internal think tank for the organization, where we support across all functions. So the ideas will surface, we'll take them, we'll massage them, we'll reach out to our research consultants and our policy consultants and those people who are much smarter than us, and then compile that and share that in a way that can be disseminated to the appropriate audience. But after all of that, she'll still just ask me a question for blood pressure medication. So I don't know how much that makes sense to her. But yeah, that's what we do on the policy team at AAM.
Although I have one problem with what you just said. They're not smarter than us, those consultants. We do lean on our consultants at times. And Lisa, how about you?
I think they would be proud. I think it would be I told you type of moment. What I didn't share with you up front is that I didn't choose to go into pharmacy. So that decision was kind of made for me by my parents. So I think, they would have yes, I'm very proud and we're so happy that you listened to us. So we told you so to go into pharmacy. It's really hard to beat the proposition statement of what we do at AAM. I'm very passionate about our mission statement, about increasing access to more affordable generics and biosimilar medicines, and working with those stakeholders to actually really fulfill those, that need. When I explained that to my mom, because my dad passed away several years back, but she's like, I'm really happy that there are folks like you out there that are continuing to work and to ensure that she has the medications that she needs and that it's affordable. I mean, I think to her, it's a fairly clear cut.
So Lisa, in those early days or when you were practicing, converting a patient who was used to taking a brand name drug, and then, all of a sudden this generic option is available to them. Did you find resistance, or were people anxious to try the generic, or how did you counsel patients from brand to the generic?
The experience that I had was there was more reliance on the views of the pharmacist. So let's say you had a medication that just went off of patent and now was commercially available for a generic. From a business end of it, you're going to have your insurers or payers kind of pushing that generic fill, across the board. We used to get a lot of questions when you will be filling a prescription for brand because there wasn't a generic available, and all of a sudden there's an approved generic. It goes on the AB rating, and boom, your next fill is a generic. What we used to do is we used to flag those, and we would put a consult sticker on those. And when the patient came in, first thing that the clerk did was, the pharmacist wants to speak with you. You would move over to the consultation area where you can have a little privacy, and then the pharmacist will educate them on the change. So it wasn't just like now you're getting the generic, it's the cheaper stuff. No, that wasn't how we used to do it.
When I worked as a pharmacist, similar to what you would see at Target or Kohl's or something like that, on the receipt, it printed out how much you saved had you filled through a brand. And I can recall a patient who I hadn't seen in a couple of months because she thought that was her balance due. So when she finally came, I explained to her, those are your savings because your medication went generic, and of course, exuberance.
This has been a lot of fun. This has been great to hear from both of you on your experiences when you were wearing the white pharmacist coat, and to today with the very valuable roles that you play here at AAM. And I've loved the conversation. So thank you to you, Lisa Parks and Monét Stanford, for this conversation in celebration of National Pharmacist Month. So thanks everybody for joining All Access, and we'll see you next time.